Hello, folks, and welcome to the He Doesn't Want a podcast. The podcast, as always, is sponsored by Drumbo Park Racecourse, which is now once again open for business, which is good to hear, and Learners Ross Driving School. The podcast today is in three different parts, okay? So, because it was the same issue, I wanted to do it as one single episode, but it is quite a long episode, and the reasons for that I'll explain now. So, the first part is an interview with Brendy Dorrian. Brendy's had a good career within amateur and intermediate football, and I wanted to bring him on. Firstly, to talk about his career, but secondly, and this is where the second part comes into it, to talk about the incident which happened to him during the summer, where he had a cardiac arrest at a training session up at Crumlin United's pitch. For anybody that hasn't heard this, it really is a story of what a team can do to help save a teammate's life, basically, which is what the goalkeeper at Crumlin United, Marty Farniok, done that day. Brendy had a cardiac arrest on the pitch. Crumlin United had a defib on site, which was they were so lucky to have, and Marty was able to resuscitate Brendy and bring him back to life. Brendy is now fully fit and healthy, considering, and it's amazing to see the turnaround in Brendy, considering what could have happened. For me, it hit home because Brendy's my cousin. We've grown up together, and in terms of fitness, I'm a year older than Brendy in terms of fitness. And if any of us was going to have a heart attack, I always thought it would have been me over Brendy. Brendy is fit as a fiddle, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink much. Always wanted a first when you'd done your pre-season training sessions in the groups. And it was such a shock. Now, Brendy had an underlying health issue, heart issue, which he wasn't aware of at the time. So I wanted to, first of all, do this interview. The first part is 45 minutes long. It's an interview with Brendy about his career, which I think adds context to the story of what happened. And also it's an interesting story anyway, because he's had a good career, as I said previous. The second part's 45-minute interview with Brendy and Marty Farniok, the goalkeeper who saved his life. And watching them two on the screen together, a talk about what happened that day was amazing for me to listen to, and I hope you feel the same when you watch it or listen to it yourself. And the last part is an interview which is about 20 minutes long with James Murphy from Tullymore Swifts. Tullymore have had previous history with players having underlying health issues. Unfortunately, two of their players previously lost their lives with underlying health issues. Brendy is a success story. Brendy has also just finished playing with Tullymore Swifts before that training session at Crumlin United. So I encourage you to try and listen to all three parts of the podcast episode itself. It doesn't have to be done at one time, but because, as I said, it is long. But that's just to explain what way it's going to go, so you know what to expect going forward, folks. And I hope you enjoy. Brendy, how's things, mate? You keeping well?
Not too bad, Gary. Not too bad. I'm getting on all right. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. I take it you're a wee bit bored in the house at the moment, are you?
I'm trying to keep myself occupied. Kids are at school all day today. Mrs. is away to work to try and reopen again on Friday, so taking over. She's had me kind of doing a bit of Christmas shopping, lots of online shopping, keep me occupied that way. But
plenty of cleaning as well.
That,
what I want to talk to you about, Brendy, is your career in football. So for anybody that doesn't know you at all, where did your career start? Where did you start playing?
Yeah, I spent all my youth career at Donegal Celtic. It was a couple of teams around our area: Donegal Celtic, Plunkett, Celtic boys. So probably nearest to my house was Donegal Celtic. So the dad brought me there from I was 8 or 9 probably. Stayed there right through the whole youth setup. Back then, although Plunkett now, Donegal Celtic don't really have the youth setup anymore, but back then DC's setup was unbelievable. I mean, this is the amount of players who came through that a great setup. Run the buses every week, every Saturday up from the loft in the Grove, all through the Down and Connor League. But all their teams seemed to be very successful back then. Plunkett, I remember Plunkett at our age weren't really, didn't really, I don't know if they did have a team, but they were never really any good. Celtic boys were always quite good. Yeah. Under 10s, under 11s, Celtic boys probably a lot more successful than what we were. They had the likes of Dackie O'Connor and Dackie Hughes and that playing for them. Really good team, really good setup there. And then we started coming good then probably from 12 upwards, and we won everything, like leagues and cups every year, doing doubles and trebles. We had a really, really good setup from probably under 12 onward. We got a couple of players in at that age who were unbelievable. They should have went on a lot more. Like Mickey O'Halloran and Piers Tully, James McGrogan, Ryan Catney.
Yeah.
We started getting good. Like Paul Fay was our manager then. He took us over probably around about then, and we just seemed to be very successful since then. Stayed there right through, and then even up to under 14, under 15, we got the likes of Jared McAlay and that in, and a couple more players coming as well. We kept some of our players. The likes of Cats went across the water and things as well. So you were losing one or two, but you were bringing in really good players to replace them. The only thing that ever really we didn't win at younger was always the Northern Ireland Cup, and then under 15. I think that was under 15. We eventually got to the final of the Northern Ireland Cup, and it was going to be on the Thursday night. I remember it well. It was the Thursday night at Chimney Corner's pitch up at Allen Park, and we'd had a training session on the Tuesday down at Woodlands. And I remember just before training, we were a bit early and we were knocking the ball about, and I went over on my shoulder. I think it was Piers Tully went in for a tackle or something like that, and went over my shoulder. Felt the pain straight away, and I had to go home. Missed the Northern Ireland Cup final with a broken collarbone. Had to sit and watch the boys, but lucky enough to won anyway. I think we played St Pat's in the final, who were probably our main challengers back then as well, around about that level. Got the Northern Ireland Cup won eventually after all the years of trying, but I had to miss the final because I was sitting with a broken collarbone, which was huge fun.
Long list of injury history anyway.
Yeah, there's been a few injuries in there, definitely. So yeah, DC then kind of broke away under 16. Players moved on, went and started playing Irish League clubs. I stayed on. Went in, they formed the under 18 team then around about that. I think the year before I was under 18, they formed, and that would have been Alexa Big Vinty and Docs and all playing. And they were a year or two above me. Then I moved up into the under 18. I remember we used to go to the Foyle Cup every year, or every couple of years with DC as well. It was a brilliant tournament. We always done okay in it, but under 18 level, we actually got to the final of the Foyle Cup. I remember that we played Sheffield United, got hammered in the final, but I think it was Liam Hunter was managing us back then as well. It was, it was the boys that we came through with, the likes of Jared McAlay and Big Connor Taggart and Steve McCrory and guys like that playing. And then the under 18s, then we moved up the following year. We were the older ones, done okay, in the Irish Youth League, because DC were obviously Premiership back then, so we played in the Irish Youth League under 18s, and we held our own. We got to some semi-finals of the youth cups and things like that. Done okay in the league. I remember one game in particular, we beat Linfield at Windsor, beat them 1-0. A great game, stuff like that. So played for DC right through, and then under 18s, obviously you get too old. Went through, then they'd set up the reserve team, and I remember playing, it was like 2 or 3 games. I remember myself going, played right back, and I was going, did all right here, played rightly, a couple of boys, obviously a lot older than me, were playing reserve, and then a couple of our team were playing. And then I remember the next game, we played somewhere, and the manager named the squad, and there was 3 or 4 of us just left out of the squad altogether because some of the first team players had to play.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't be annoyed with that, Probably looking back now, I was probably like I was 17, 18 going, I should be playing reserve. And, it was going to happen all season. So I remember talking probably to yourself and your dad back then as well about the board. Yeah. And I remember meeting Eamon Doherty, Docs, I played with Docs, obviously he was a couple of years above me at DC. I remember meeting him at Black Taxi one day and him saying to me, I'm at Ford, and Bobs and Vinty are there, and Taki O'Connor's here. And I was like, give that a try. And I knew obviously the Ford connection with you and your dad and that. I'd been to watch him when we were young, so I thought I'll give it a go. And then went from there. That was the end of the youth football and the senior football. Big eye opener then when I was saying Ford. But I think I was 18 probably when I was saying Ford.
Yeah, so I always remember when you first came into a team, you were obviously had ability, but you were always you were a lot slimmer and slighter then, and it's a big. We've spoken about it before in a podcast where it's a big sort of movement into senior football, and then you're coming from Irish League youth teams or reserve, and then people are going to amateur league and maybe thinking this will be handy enough. But then you realise the standard, and the standard of 2A at that time was really high. So it was.
It was a great league then. Like looking back now, that first year forward, like I came in, as you say, I was still haven't got much bigger, but then I was obviously very slim and very lightly built. And I remember getting in and playing like a couple of games. Started off with seconds at forward, and I remember playing a few games and like going past boys, and I was always quick enough, but not overly particularly quick. I was going past like maybe early 30s, late 30s guys playing second team football, and they were just hacking you. They were just, as soon as you went past them, they were just kicking you, and you were like, so you had to grow up really quickly, you know, in amateur league. As like I'd never followed amateur league as a kid. Obviously, when you say you're playing youth teams and you're kind of looking at Irish League, you follow Irish League and things like that, maybe down as championship level, but amateur league was never really on my radar. And then when I signed for Ford, it was a massive eye opener. But as you say, the standard of when I kind of broke into the first team of Ford probably halfway through that first season. To say it was kind of up and down in between the first and second, doing sub for the first, and then get down and playing a few games, back up again. But the league that year, like looking back now, obviously getting on to play like a Crumlin and playing Premier Division. 2A then was like the Premier is now. It was all those teams. You had your, you had your Macalatas, but actually I was even before Macalata were there. So you had your Dariakis and your Shankill United, who were Harlot and Wolf back then, I think. You had even the likes of Rathburn were very good. You had even, I think Albert Foundry were there for a while. And then you had Art Glass, who were good side. Probably some would have missed out. And then you had Crumlin Star coming through. I think they came up maybe after my second or third year at Ford. They came into 2A, and they were again like they're all Premier Division clubs now, and are really like they've been there for years now in the Premier Division. They've been on winning Premier Divisions and doing well in Irish Cups and Intermediate Cups and Stealing Sons and things like that. So it shows you the level back then that the clubs that were coming up, and that whole facilities thing at 2A back then held Ford back massively. It's held some of the other teams, and then they brought in that 1C, and the other teams kind of jumped up above us. But the team we had back then at Ford was superb. Like, when you're looking back now, the players we had, Dacky Byrne, I know Dacky Byrne was probably in his mid-30s then.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And, you had the likes of Dacky O'Connor obviously up front, and, him and Doc then. He was brilliant back then too. I think him and Dacky played up front together actually. Doc was always
there.
I remember going to Ford and Doc playing up front, and I was like, let's get on. But he used to score all sorts and wonder goals. When he turned up, when he had the attitude to turn up, obviously. But then, you're looking back now, even the likes of Stevie Smith and Dominic and Nets, and they were all probably coming to the end of their careers, and maybe that was the thing. There was a bit of transition after that. When them boys, although Dacky kept playing, but when the likes of Frankie and Stevie and Dominic all stopped playing, also the younger guys coming through, there was probably no in between. There was no real. It went from a really experienced team to quite a young team, and then we've done okay in the leagues. Never really challenged as much. I remember that first season. I think that first season was the year Ford had won 2A the year before. You probably know that.
Yeah.
Is that the year before you had to go on the big run? You won like 9 games in a row or something like that. And then the second
was John manager when you come in?
John was always my manager.
Yeah, no, the year before I wasn't the run. We'd been kind of dominant the whole year. John's first year, but then you're coming into a winning dressing room. But the second year, of course, was the Cochran and Corey Cup final.
Yeah, so that was my first year. So my first year, we got the Cochran Corey Cup final, and we should have won the league. Like I think we had drew and lost out of the last 4 or 5 games. We drew 3 or 4 of them, and we only needed a draw. And it was during the week game up at Turnbrook.
Yeah,
I think against Harlem Wood.
Yeah,
and I think it beat us 3-2. And I remember Rathburn, I think, won the league, and then boys were all up watching. And we literally needed a point. And I think I was on the bench that day actually, and I came on and we lost 3-2, and it was horrible because they even won the league, because we should have won the league easily that year.
Yeah.
Funny, the Cochran Corey, I remember that as well. My story about the Cochran Corey is that I remember I played the semi-final can't remember the semi-finals against.
Was Bolly Walter? Bolly Walter?
Yeah. Done quite well anyway, and I thought to myself, I have a chance of being in the starting team for the final here. But John, I think, when it came to we met up for a lunch. I remember before the final, we met up for a lunch, but he named 15 players, and you could only really name 14. I think it's probably still the same now, but he named 15. And I remember it was Dunmurry Rex pitch. We went up and we were out doing the warm up, and Big Bisto was one of the centre forwards, and he had to go out and do a fitness test, and he could barely walk, never mind jog or run, but he declared himself fit, as obviously anyone's going to do coming to the final. So I remember John coming over to me and saying, "Listen, you're on the bench, you're going to be fourth sub." And I was like, "You can't be fourth sub." And I like, being an 18-year-old, was strapped me through a huff and set there for the whole game. I remember Daniel Connor's goal to win it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
He took it from the sideline and hit a shot from about 40 yards and flew in to go on 1-0. And I remember after, we were going to collect our medals for the Cotton Quarry Cup. John handed me my medal, and I was like, "I don't even want it," blah, blah. Looking back now, it was the only medal I won. My whole But yeah, so after that game, I was like, I'm not coming back before next year. That's me. And then back pre-season, I realised how I loved my time at Ford. The setup was brilliant. The people there were brilliant. The weekends away at the end of the year were unbelievable. And probably less said about them, the better. But yeah, so Ford then stayed there probably about 7 years or so.
Yeah.
Then became working way through, became first team regular and stuff. And then I think John made me captain of the first team, and I think it was only like 22, 23 at the time. Vinty was captain before me, and then he didn't turn up for like 2 Saturdays in a row because him and Bulls were at the drink forever. So John put him to the captaincy. Vinty still cracks up with me now for stealing his captain's armband. I'm like, "You definitely lost that yourself, miss." But yeah, so we're done. The only thing missing from the Ford, like the time at Ford, was just that wee bit of success. As I said, that we kind of had that transition, and even towards the end of my Ford career, like there, we brought in the likes of Jared Lackey and John Ansley came in for a while, and we Doc and guys like that. And I thought we might have a team here, like kind of, but it never really materialized. And I remember my last year at Ford. Once we lost Daniel Connor and his goals, but we brought in a couple of centre forwards. I think John brought in the likes of Dixie, God rest him, and stuff like that. But you could never get anyone who was there consistently scoring goals for you, and that was probably our main problem. We were okay defensively, but once we got into the final third, but no, once we lost Daniel, it was hard to replace. It's obviously hard to replace someone who scores 30-odd goals a season. So just that wee bit of success. But even towards the end of the time there, like it was. I think we were losing players every year. I remember that once the guys went to Dromara then as well, like the Tids and Tony O'Neill and that went to Dromara, and we never really replaced them. It was hard to replace them then because, you know, the pitch situation kept us in 2A. There was teams bypassing us that we were probably better than, you know, and we just needed that break. If we had went up into 1B or then 1C, whenever it was, we would have went on and just went up the leagues. I'm confident of that, but as we started losing the players then, and I actually remember my last year at Ford. We set up a change formation at like a 3-5-2, and me and Mono played wing backs. I was in the right wing back, and he was left wing back, and we finished top goal scorers with like 7 goals each. Joint top goal scorer. And I remember thinking to myself, we're never going to be successful if you're right and left back, you're top goal scorers. Yeah. And then from Ford, then probably then at the end of that, I think it was the end of that season where we were playing Mono with top goal scorers, which is ridiculous. I remember speaking to Paddy Kelly then, and he'd left DC I think the year before, and our column then was playing up at Chimney Corner with Ryan Jenkins, and I think they went on loan from DC at first, like DC reserves, and they played up. So Paddy was going to watch some of their matches, and they'd asked Paddy that summer then to come in as the manager. And I think he thought, I'll give it a go and see how we're getting on. So he invited me up to the pre-season. So I thought, what we'll do, you know, Championship 2, it's a big jump from 2A up to Championship 2, not having played any higher than 2A. So I thought, and I'm going to struggle here. But I went up and gave the pre-season a go. I remember my first game for Chimney Corner, actually. It was a friendly against someone up at our pitch. And I scored a header from about, it was outside the 18-yard box. It's like a bullet header flew into the top corner. I thought, geez, I've done well here. And I remember coming off and people were like, people must have been going, who's this guy? We've saying like scores headers from outside the box.
All these goals you scored, I can't even remember you ever scoring.
Up until they scored 7 that year, I think I only scored 1 about the 6 years before. But I remember scoring that, and then Paddy brought a few of the Belfast boys up the Chimney Corner. They were always a struggle. They always struggled around the bottom of that championship too. Yeah. But again, because teams didn't have the facilities go up into that championship, they always kind of survived and didn't get relegated. So the year we went up, we knew it was always going to be, you're going from relegation threatened every year and bringing in a whole new team, basically. We always knew it was going to be a struggle. And a lot of us had never played at that level before, even the boys brought up in Belfast. We hadn't played at that level, maybe with the exception of Harbo doing nets. A lot of us were young enough and hadn't played even. The highest I played was 2A before that. So it was a big jump, but it wasn't one. Like, we started off okay. We had a couple of results early on in the season, and we went on a bad run, and we couldn't pick up a win. And I remember looking at the table. It was nearly Christmas, and we were looking at the table, and we were second or third bottom. And I thought it's going to be a long season. And then I got a phone call to say Paddy was leaving. I was like, so him and Napper and that were all, obviously, I was traveling up with them and traveling up with some of the players. And then once they left them Christmas, I don't know whatever. I think Paddy had kind of said to them it'll only ever be a temporary thing. But we struggled then to bring it. We lost a lot of the Belfast boys. I think it was only myself, Sean Hanna, and big Tommy Conlon that stayed on. And out the season. And we struggled that year. Like, we didn't really. There was a guy Arnie who was a coach at the club, and Gary Flaw, and they ended up taking the fully into the season. And we put a couple of wins here and there. We got a couple of scraped a few wins, and we've done enough, and we stayed up. But the following season, then Stephen Hatfield then had been announced as the new Chimney Corner manager. I was like, right, at that point, I was like, I'll probably move on. Didn't know where I was considering go back to forward maybe or something like that. And then I had a chat with Stephen, and he said to me, listen, give it a go. We'll do pre-season. If you're not enjoying it, you can move on from there. I'm going to bring in a lot of boys. And he did. He was pretty good for it. He brought in a lot of players. But I remember, actually, you'll remember this, we went on a stag to Ibiza, did the stag. And I think we arrived back. We went Monday to Friday or something like that. And we arrived back on the Friday night. And I got a phone call literally just off the plane from Ibiza to say, be at the club, be at Chimney Corner tomorrow. We're having a practice match. The new manager's coming to watch us all. He wants to check it all out. And I was like, oh my God. So I could just imagine Stephen Hatfield watching me in that first game, probably spoken at the sideline, going, who is this guy? But anyway, me and Steve struck a really good relationship. Actually, he was very, very good to me, and he brought a lot of boys in. Some of the boys from Portadown, down around his neck of the woods, and some of the boys, and they were very, very good players. And then I remember Kyle Randall came in as a coach, and he brought a few in from Distillery, and we had a really, really good start, very youthful. And then we brought Dean Mackerlin up from West Belfast as well, and he's a character. So me and him used to travel up together. And then he was captain, I was vice captain up there. And then we done really, really, really well that season. Actually, we started off like house on fire, and we were doing really well. And I remember we got to the end of the season, and for Chimney Corner to finish anywhere above mid-table was really, really good. I think we finished like that championship 2 with like Armagh City and DSNI and Queen's University, and it was really, really challenging league, and a lot of Irish League players playing. And I think we finished like 6th or 7th in the league, which looking back, it was probably like 6th or 7th. But for Chimney Corner to do that was massive because they always struggled relegation.
Yeah, and a very small budget as well compared to our teams.
And that was the thing at the end of that year. I think Stephen wanted to build the following year and maybe try and bring in, but we didn't have the budget in the club. Hopefully, tell you that they competed that championship 2 level. You need to have a decent budget. And I remember Stephen trying the same players and stuff like that. And then at the end of that season, we thought we'll build on it. But the club itself made the decision. We finished 6th or 7th, I think, in the league. And the club themselves made the decision to relegate themselves because they couldn't cope financially with the Championship 2, which was disappointing for us because we worked hard all year to try and build the club, but the club made the right decision. That club wouldn't have survived if they hadn't have made that decision.
Yeah.
And they dropped down to, I think it's that Ballymena Intermediate League and whatever now, and they're rebuilding now, doing really well. So at the end of that season, then I thought traveling to Antrim 3 and 4 times a week was tough. I'd had my first wee girl then as well, and you were coming, like I was going straight from work every Tuesday and Thursday and not coming home at 10 o'clock, and it wasn't fair, and then being away all day at Saturday. So I thought, get something a bit closer to home. And then I went from Chimney Corner then to Crumlin, actually, and the Crumlin United. So Paddy had then taken over at Crumlin United. I think the season before that he'd taken over, and I'd stayed at Chimney Corner then. And then at the end of that season, I thought, well, Crumlin, from where I live, Crumlin, although it's still a bit of travel, it's like 10, 15 minutes up the back roads. So I thought, look, I would go to Crumlin. And again, we got a real good squad together there. So at that time, Crumlin were 1A. I think they'd been relegated from the Premier maybe 10, 12 years before that, and they were trying every year to get back up. And then just never had been successful. But in that first season I spent at Crumlin, we had a really, really good squad then. Like Paddy brought a couple of boys up from Belfast again. Some of the Crumlin boys were super. Next to be Pat McCaff and Gavey, Pat Wall were all there. Fergal Burke was there, and then there was the likes of coming up in Belfast, like Mickey Mulligan, and he's at forward now. Big R McConney, we Keegan McAllister, big Mark McKeown, keeper. Like we had a real, really good squad. Ger Keenan, me and him played centre half together that year, and big Anto between the three of us, and we done really well. And eventually, I remember the first season, we had, I think, 5 games to go. You know, it goes to the end of the season, you have those Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, and we had to win like 4 out of the last 5 games to have a chance to get promoted, and we won all 5. Remember the day we clinched promotion night. Downpatrick won the league, and we finished second. Downpatrick had a really good team that year. All the Holland brothers playing, and they won the league. I think they ended up by 4 or 5 points the league. But we got promoted away to some Pats who were playing in the Cliff, and R McKinney scored a free kick. So we clinched promotion. The club had a lock in that night. It was outstanding, really, really brilliant. Probably, like I say, I haven't won many trophies apart from the Cochran Quarry Cup when I took the strap after it, but that was probably the best moment, getting that promotion and seeing people in the club in tears because they were back in the Premier Division. You know, you didn't realise my first year at Crumlin, but I really took to it. It's a real brilliant setup club. The people behind the scenes are amazing at it. So I ended up, then we're back in the Premier the following year, and I spent the next I spent 4 years altogether at Crumlin. Done okay. Like we always finish top half of the table, but it's hard when you go up into that Premier Division. You know, we all know what teams are doing in the Premier Division, and it's very, very hard to compete against that. Not just the Premier Division, teams all over where there's brown envelopes here, there, and everywhere, and it's very, very. We all know what's happening, but no one says it too loudly and things like that. But when you get to that kind of, we were maybe 5th and 6th in the first 2 seasons in the Premier Division, and the teams that, like around us had brilliant teams. Like there was Magalata were at their strongest then, and then you had Ard Rangers who were super, and Rathrainen were very good. Derry were always good, and then Crumlin Star then came through, and again Crumlin Star then dominated as his team, and even now that East Belfast and other challenge, it's very, very difficult to kind of get above that 5th and 6th place. So stayed at Crumlin then for 4 years, and then we had the second wee girl, and I always said to my wife that we had another baby, and she opened up her own business around about the same time, but I always said to her, she's a beautician, so a salary is her main day on a Thursday night, and I always promised her that if she opened up her own business that I would give up the football and take the kids on Saturday. So I stayed true to my word at the end of that season then, and I decided then, left Crumlin and didn't play. So I retired at 30, 31, something like that.
31, yeah.
So I thought, that's me done. And I didn't really miss it that much because I was always like, I was going to watch matches here and there and bringing the girls with me and going to the park and things like that on Saturday. So you had enough to keep you going. But it wasn't until around about March or April of that season where I didn't play, and the midweek games kicked in, and I was like, I'd love to be playing that. I love those midweek games at the end of the season, and I kind of started them at around then, but not enough where I was like, I wanted to play again or anything like that. Yeah. I remember that year actually that I left. Paddy and I had left Crumlin around about the same time, as Paddy had the family issues and things, and so the whole setup of Crumlin had changed. And Kieran Caldwell then came in, and I know Kieran obviously quite well. He's cousin of my wife, and I spoke to Kieran, and it's staying to form for Crumlin, but I've always said to him, I can't commit, with the baby and the new baby and Nicholas' new business, and I remember him ringing me like a couple of games into the week and said, "Would you do me a favour? We're a few boys short," and I played like 2 or 3 games at the start of the season, and then he got boys back, and I thought, I can't play or anything, so that was it for that season. So it took me a year.
There was a few cup semi-finals and stuff when your Crumlin team as well, wasn't there? It came quite close to winning a couple of trophies. Maybe not the league, but
a few semi-finals. I think the first one was the Clarence Cup.
That was in your 1A too, wasn't it? Yeah.
1A, yeah. I think it was the same year we got promoted. Could be wrong, but I'm nearly sure it was. We played Shankill United actually over at Seaview, and we lost 2-1. And that was a game we probably should have won. It probably could have went either way that game. I think it was around about Easter Monday or something, that semi. And I remember it was a big crowd at it, and Crumlin I don't think had got to that kind of semi-final stage even for quite a few years. So it was a massive crowd from Crumlin down. Probably should have won, and we gave a goal away late on, which was so sloppy. I think actually the first goal, I still get slag. I don't think it was an OG. It was a deflection, but I've been reminded a few times that it was an OG by me. It was flying in, and I tried to stick my foot out and stop it and deflect it in the top corner. That's my experience. Wasn't an OG. But yeah, the second goal, I think we were 1-0 up after very early. Big Ian Brownie scored after a minute, and then probably scoring so early affected it because we didn't know whether to attack or defend or what to do. So we kind of just didn't do enough. We probably didn't do enough. Could have went either way. Shankill didn't dominate by any means, but one goal nicked it. Very, very disappointing. But the other one was the most disappointing one. The Steeling Sons. I think that was 2017. It was because my second year was just born, and it said to Nicola, "Let me finish this year, and that's it." And I remember saying to Nicola, as we were going through the stages of the Steeling Sons, telling her that the final was on Christmas morning, and she was like, "Nicola's by no means a lover of football and doesn't understand. This doesn't take into account." I was like, "Listen, if we get to the final, it's Christmas morning." And she was like, "You're hardly playing." And I was like, "Of course I'm playing. It's like Steelers in the cup final. It's like it'll be my biggest achievement." And she was like, "But it's Ayla's first Christmas." And I was like, "Yeah, but she's going to have loads of other Christmases," and that didn't go down too well. So as I remember, we won the quarter final. I think Bangor. We beat DC, and then we beat Bangor in the quarter final, I think, and then we played Newington semi-final. And it's a game that haunts me still to this day. We definitely a game we should have won. We can't, not that we threw it away, but things that happened in the game kind of turned it. We were 1-0 up. I remember Paddy McIlkenny, who does not head a ball, scored a header. Paddy's one of the most skillful players I've ever played with, but heading is definitely not his forte. He scored a header. First half, we were winning 1-0, and we were completely controlling the game. But I remember Tommy Lamb was playing centre midfield for us, and Tommy was absolutely bossing the game, controlling the game. Probably his best game I'd seen him play for Crumlin. He was outstanding that day.
Yeah.
Within half time, 1-0 up, came out second half, and I don't know whether it was tactics on Newington's behalf or what, but they took Tommy completely out of the game. The guy went in for a tackle on him, and I don't think Tommy kicked the ball the rest of that season. Tommy had already had a bad injury on his knee, and it was the same leg, but the guy went in and took him out of the game. But just as that happened, a bit of a ruckus broke out and everyone ran in. But I remember that Fergal Burke, who was playing centre half of me, went in, and him and a guy got beat it, and the two of them ended up getting red cards for it. The guy who made the tackle probably should have been a straight red. I think the tackle was a straight red itself. I think he got booked. And those two boys then, for their handbags, got sent off. But losing Fergal backed it off massively. Like, Fergal was so good for us. And me and him, I think the build up that semi final, we played like, because we kind of chopped and changed centre halves all year, but about 4 or 5 games before that semi final, me and Fergal started playing centre half together, and we kept like 5 clean sheets in a row. We just kind of bounced off each other that season. So losing him was massive. Although they lost, I think it was their centre forward. At the same time, we lost Fergal. Obviously, Tommy then had to go off injured, so we lost control. We lost our midfielder and our centre half.
Spanning our team, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the guy actually scored 2. They came back and beat us 2-1, and it was the guy who Tommy was marking in centre midfield who just run off whoever was came in to replace him. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I remember the second goal. They were able to make it 1 each. It was fair enough, and kind of pushing. Games kind of could have went either way again. We had a couple of chances we probably should have took. But I remember the second goal, the ball came over the top, and the guy went to take it down his chest, but it rolled right down his arm, and he went through and scored. And the referee let it count. Main referees aren't on best of terms, best of times anyway, as you probably know yourself. But that night, I was like, it was an obvious handball. It was a bad way to lose. So we lost 2-1, them guys. And they went on, like, fair play. Newington had a good team there. Like, Newington still have a good team. They're in that, around that Steel and Sons Cup semi-finals every year. So not take nothing away from them at all. They went on, and I think they won the final 4-0. So I think they played Linfield Swifts and they absolutely hammered them. Yeah. So I look back now going, we should have won the semi-final. Now, it's not to say, I mean, a final, anything can happen, but that was definitely one that got away from us. That could have been the one where and looking back personally, that's the one that got away. You know, that's my chance of that silverware that I never got. These things happen, that's football, so I just move on from it.
Although you might not have missed football the year after when you stopped, obviously you stopped for family reasons, but was there ever any sort of part of you which thought, I wish I'd have won more trophies, or I wish I'd have maybe, if I played longer, I might have a chance of winning a trophy somewhere? Or
yeah, well, funny, like, I mean, obviously it's your biggest regret, not winning trophies in football. Like, everyone, that's why you play football, is to win trophies. And I mean, you get personal, like, you get your players of the years and stuff like that, but it's not like, it's a team game, you want to win trophies. So obviously that's my biggest regret, obviously. But when I left Crumlin, then I always considered going back up when Kieran was getting a new team together, and they're doing quite well, doing very well now. But I just thought, you know, it's a lot of commitment. And I have a brother-in-law, married the sister, Paddy Crawford, who him and his mates then sent Tullymore Swifts way back years ago. That was their team, and they came through the Murray League and whatever. But they then obviously got accepted into the amateur league a few years ago. I know you know Tullymore well. Yeah. Tortured for years. Please come play for the Swifts. Please come play for the Swifts. And I'd always said no, I'm playing for Crumlin, whatever. But that season, towards the end of that season, when I didn't play, Paddy was particularly on my case. And the one thing that he blackmailed me with was, I'll mind the kids every Saturday for you because I'm not playing anymore. So I'll take the kids, I'll take the 2 girls to watch the match, or I'll take them wherever, and you can play. So I thought, I'll give it a go. So I kind of thought about it all that summer, and I went back then, didn't do a pre-season, which was my massive mistake, because when you're early 30s, pre-seasons are very, very important. Like, I was always naturally fit, and I remember getting up, I think it was one of the last years of Crumlin, and we always done the Glen pre-season, and I was always up near the front. We done like circuits around the Glen, it's like forest and Crumlin. Yeah. And your stacks and hills and stuff. It's really, really good. But I remember that one of my last years, and the management team, so it was Paddy and Napper and Johnny McChrystal, and then the 2 boys who managed the second was Big Monty and Killer. And I remember them as taking a bet at the start of who would finish the circuit fastest. And I remember Monty saying, I think Brendy will. And I started off like house on fire first lap, and by the 3rd lap, we brought in obviously younger players coming through. I think I was like the 5th last. I was like, that's the like my fitness is very quickly caught up on me now that I'm hitting 30.
Yeah.
So when I went to Tullymore, obviously I didn't do a pre-season, and I should have. I was just kind of probably being lazy and didn't know whether I was going to sign or not. And I remember going up to play. I think it was their last pre-season friendly, and Paddy had eventually twisted my arm. And I was talking to like Steve Fagan and Bobs and that were there. And James Murphy obviously was there, and I know a lot of the Tullymore players and some great lads like. And so I thought I'd go up and give it a go. And I played that pre-season friendly, and then I signed. And the new managers brought in, Danny McDonald and Dee McConville brought in, and I never really knew either two of them before that. I knew of them kind of thing. But yeah, we I looked at the squad we had at Tullymore, and I thought to myself then, maybe this is a chance. I think 2B, and I was like, look at the squad going, I haven't played 2B. Like I've never played 2B, but I imagine that level, like the squad I'm looking at now, won't be far away from being able to win that league.
Yeah.
And like we started off first 5 games, we didn't concede a goal. We were winning 4s and 5s, and I think maybe people got a bit ahead of themselves at that year, Tullymore, because at the start of last season, because I think we thought then, we're going to walk this league kind of thing. No one ever said it, but I think we kind of thought. But looking back now, then we went on a bit of a bad run around about Christmas time, and then Danny and Dee left just after Christmas. So that was January this year. They left, and we kind of went. Like, we couldn't get a win. A couple of players had left, and a few players injured here and there, and we didn't have a big squad, so we kind of struggled a bit. But we probably would have finished, because obviously the season was cut short because of the pandemic and whatever. But I think we'd probably finished mid-table towards the end of it. But again, looking back, the squad we had at the start of last season was definitely good enough to win 2B. We played a few teams, obviously. Ravenhill probably would have done to win it, and we played them. Should have beaten them the first game, and then they beat us 2-0 the second game, which was fair enough. The good side. Ben Madigan beat us, but looking there, we weren't a million miles away if we had turned up. So then obviously played for Tullymore at the end of that season, which was obviously cut short. But then, just during the pandemic, I thought to myself, you know what, I'm 33. I'm only going to have 1 or 2 years left. What should I do next season? Will I stay on Tullymore, or will I give Crumlin one more go? Just thinking, play a bit of a higher level again. But I was happy enough even to go up and play for the seconds, because Kieran Doc, obviously know Doc well, and started managing the seconds up there. So he'd been on to me, and at first he wanted me to go up and give him a hand with coaching. And I thought, nah, not yet. Maybe in a couple of years down the line. So I thought I'll maybe go up. But when I went back up to Crumlin, the first team had been training you at non-contact training that all teams were doing. Them guys were flying. They were maybe 5-6 weeks behind them, and I was going up. So I said to Doc, let me know when the seconds are starting back, and I'll go up. And so I went up and done 2 pre-season sessions. Done a couple of sessions, and the first then obviously we were training at the same time, kind of split, because them guys were just a bit ahead of us. But on that, I trained on the Tuesday night, and Kieran Doc and Kieran Caldwell both came and said, hey, listen, we're having a game amongst ourselves. We're allowed to play a game on Saturday first since the whole lockdown, but we're playing amongst ourselves. We're going to play 11 against 11, so the whole first team squad, and we'll obviously need some of the second team squad to play. And that was a bit of an eventful occasion. That's all I'd say. So,
but before we get there, I don't want to actually talk about this here, because I know you don't remember any of it. I want to bring Marty in for that bit. But before we go to the segment with Marty in, and we'll talk about that Saturday. I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your career players you've played with.
Yeah.
The best players you've played with throughout your career, and then the toughest opponents you've had as well.
Yeah. This is where my phone starts beeping and saying, why didn't mention me, and how come I wasn't the one player to play with? I can think of 3 or 4 people already who's going to text me and say that. But best players to play with.
Have a five-a-side team. There you go. I'll make it easier for you.
I'm not going to name a keeper, because keepers are insane, and I will give a couple of honourable mentions. I'll probably give Stephen Harvey, when the Harvey one stays, smashing keeper. He just floats around different clubs is probably his problem sometimes. But on his day, Harvey's been excellent. I played with Crumlin, played in the Chimney Corner. I remember him from DC. He was outstanding. Another one actually played with when we were under 18, Brian Neeson, me Bomb. Yeah. Bomb was unbelievable. You can see he's still playing Irish League now. He's quality keeper. Going into the players, outfield players are probably my first one. I'm going to name Dacky Byrne. You obviously know Dacky very well. I played with Dacky obviously for about 7 years forward. And the problem, looking back now, I was about 18, 19. And Dacky was shouting at me for things, and I was shouting back at him and screaming and shouting. And couldn't play with him, like going, what is he? Well, he just won't leave me alone. Looking back now, I appreciate what he was doing. He was trying to bring me on as a player. And like as I say, Dacky was mid-30s then, and he was still man of the match every week. He was unbelievable. So definitely I'll have Dacky Byrne in. I would have to name Dacky O'Connor. Although I only played 1 year forward with him, I remember him from we were younger as well. Like he played against me for Celtic boys, and then even under 18 and that, he was at DC at the time I was there. Dacky O'Connor was probably the best goal scorer I played with in the time. I'm sure you'll probably agree. Like he could get 4 goals out of nothing. Like he wouldn't touch the ball for an hour and he'd bang in 2 within 5 minutes, and that was just him. Nothing fazed him. He just went out of the pitch just to enjoy it. I would definitely name Dacky O'Connor. So if a defender and a centre forward, sort of. One I would name, I'll call him a utility player from a team at Crumlin. Again, I played with him when he was probably past his best. He was probably early to mid-30s then. Potwall. Yeah. Potwall could play right back 1 week and be man of the match, and then score 2 playing up front the following week. He could play anywhere. Like when I first went to Crumlin, I think he played up front, and he was super. Played in midfield, and then he ended up playing right back for half a season, and he was 8 out of 10 every week. Also loved to tackle, which is a massive trait that I like in players. So I'd have Potwall. Another one from Crumlin, actually, I would probably have. He's so probably underrated. No, he's not even underrated. He just doesn't care about football. It's madness. Fergal Burke. He is probably the best player at Crumlin the whole time I was there. And players coming in and out, he was probably the best player with the most natural ability. But he just wouldn't train, wouldn't get fit, But when he played, he was unbelievable. And again, said about him playing centre half. I mean, he was probably a centre midfielder, but especially in Crumlin's pitch, he just didn't train, so he didn't keep himself fit. So he struggled to get about the pitch probably more as he got, especially when he got a bit older. But you could play him centre midfield, centre half, and then he played right back for a while as well. Fergal Burke was unbelievable, one of the best players to play with, definitely. So I would say that's probably what. That's
4. Yeah.
4. Last one, probably need someone with a wee bit of skill in there. Do you know one player? Actually, he's been done well, and I love playing with him. Problem. Paddy McElkenny. Paddy McElkenny has the quickest feet you'll ever see. He is outstanding. He always, the thing with Paddy, especially against Crumlin, people thought he blew hot and cold, but he turned up when you needed him to turn up. You know, he was very, very good. He's been done now and saying for Crumlin Star and won trebles, and that's not because Crumlin Star and amazing. They are, don't get me wrong, quality scene, but he fits into that team no problem, and that's a secondary player. He can play in any team. Paddy McElkenny would probably make it as well. The couple there have obviously left. We Pat McCaff as well. Crumlin was outstanding, but. And then even younger days with him, that's kind of senior football, but younger days playing with like Ryan Catney, Jamesy McGrogan. Jamesy McGrogan is probably the most talented player I've ever played with. But again, he stopped playing from about under 16 until he was 25. He just never touched the ball because he was just crazy. But Jamesy's probably the best footballer I've ever played with, complete. But from younger, that's probably a senior team I would say. Decent enough, I would say.
What about your toughest opponents you've came across? Played right back, you've played centre half most of your career, so.
Toughest opponent for me was always the referee, no matter what game. No, it's probably my own fault, just being an absolute. I don't know what it is. When I cross that lane, I just never shut up the referees. And like I tell myself before, I'm not even going to open my mouth, and then I just can't help myself. I don't know why. But yeah, toughest opponent. When I played for Chimney Corner, there was quite a few boys who played Irish League, and they were coming down maybe towards the end of their careers. Hell, they were super players. The likes of we guy Mark Picking played. Couple of like Big Lucas that played for the Cops back then. He was very good. But overall, probably there isn't. People say that Premier Division and Championship 2. To me, I think Amateur League Premier Division is a better standard. I think that it's a harder league. There's better teams. Don't get me wrong. There's some very good teams in that Championship level, but I think the Amateur League is a harder league and probably a better standard of football. For me, the best player in the Amateur League Premier Division when I played there for Crumlin was from the Mac, Collie O'Riordan. Yeah. Collie O'Riordan, and another one I knew from DC. He was a couple of years above me at DC, so I knew of him. And then he played at DC and then just went and played with him. He could play Irish League all his career if he wanted to, but he just wanted to play with his mates, which is fair enough. Collie could play anywhere, and I used to hate when we were playing the Mac. And he would probably start off in centre midfield, and then he would go to centre half when they wanted to hold on to the lead. If they needed to score a goal, to throw him up front. Yeah. And when I was playing centre half, you couldn't win a header against him. He was brilliant. He was an all-round great player. Collie was very, very good. So he's definitely on the top of the one. Another one I'll give a mention to. He played for Ard Rangers when I was at Crumlin. Big guy Ricky Rutherford up front. Ricky was, me and him used to boot the life out of each other, and I mean, kick, punch, elbow, whatever. But we just get on with it, and he has the hardest head I've ever felt in my life. Like even honestly, he bullied me in games. Honestly, he bullied me in games. I would say definitely give him a big mention. He was the hardest. I used to hate playing against him because you knew you were coming off struggling to walk afterwards, but took hands at the end of it, and that was just part of the game then. But some very good players in the Amateur League, some of the Crumlin star players like Ricky and that as well, and Joe McNeil. And another one as well, actually, from a forward team played against was Joe Gormley when he was very young, when he was a Crumlin star. I remember, I think it's probably, I don't know, he was a Crumlin star, and then they won 2A that year and went up, and I think he stayed another year, but he scored like something like 50 odd goals or something.
Did you play in the semi-final? Was it a Junior Shield semi-final at the Murray Rack? And he took up all the halfway line, I think, didn't he?
See, we played them twice in the league that year, right? And I think I played centre half and right back, or we played a back three, and he didn't score in any of the two games that we played against. I think Big Devaney was playing up front with him, and I think he scored instead. But I think we beat them and they beat us or something like that. But the semi-final, I don't know what John was thinking that day, but I played in centre midfield. I don't know why. I can't remember. I assumed Dackie Byrne would have been playing, and I think maybe 15 Bubs or something for centre half. Maybe we played it back. I'm not sure, but I remember that he scored a hat-trick actually. But his third goal, he took the ball in his own half, and I was the first person even passed. And looking back, I probably should have took him down and just gave a free kick away. But like,
you were probably already booked, Brendy, sure.
But I was like, he went past me, and then he went past whoever the centre. I know he went past Finty, and even made him Bobs, but he went past the two centre halves anyway, and he went in on, I think Paddy Saunders was doing that, and he pretended to hit it, and Saunders dropped, and he just like kind of lifted it over him and rolled it into the net. I think that was for his hat trick, and I was like, this guy's going to be a good player. So he's another one, probably toughest opponent, although he only played a few games, but you could tell he's probably 8 now. You could tell he was going to be something special.
I know. You didn't realise then how good he was going to be, but
no, and but also, one of the nicest guys you ever play against. Like if you failed, you used to apologise. You're like, yeah. Don't get this now, Mr. League.
You don't get a Crumlin star anyway. Crumlin star 4 games.
I know. I still haven't gotten an apology since that. Never.
Brendy, thanks very much for talking to us about your career. The next part I want to go on, I want to bring Marty in. I want to talk about that training game up at Crumlin and what's happened that day and what's happened since. But
Thank you very much.
I was glad to get you on for a chat about your career anyway, because I think now that you're stopped playing, we needed to highlight your career as a player as well.
Cheers, thanks.
So joining me and Brendy is Marty Farniok, who is a goalkeeper up at Crumlin United. Marty, how's things, mate? You all good?
Aye, not so bad. Yourself?
I'm good, doing well, mate. You have an important part to play in what we're coming to next. So I spoke to Brendy earlier about his career in football, and we led up to the day where you had a training game up at Crumlin United's pitch. Brendy, I want you to take over at this point and describe what you remember from that day.
Yeah, guys. So I think I touched on it a bit in the other interview, and basically we had just after the lockdown, we had a few training sessions, and then the guys at Crumlin had organised a bit of a practice game for the full squad. So there was full 11-a-side game up at Crumlin's pitch. Turned up as normal on Saturday, feeling fine, just normal. Obviously couldn't use change rooms or anything like that, so we went out onto the pitch, played away at the match. So it was 11 against 11 between the first team squad, some of the fringe players, some of the new players coming in. Kieran wanted to have a look at and things, so played the match, and I can remember basically the whole match up until probably about, Marty might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was about 60, 70 minutes, something like that. I remember my team was getting beat 2-0. I remember that much, and Big Killer had just scored, which probably surprised a lot of people. But I remember saying to Killer came on because one of the guys had to go early and we had to even up the numbers. And I remember slagging Killer when he scored, saying, "Oh, you never lose it, big man," that sort of thing. And at that point, my memory goes completely blank. So I'm assuming that's when I actually collapsed. That's my last memory. My next memory then is obviously waking up, coming out of an induced coma at the Royal, looking around with tubes hanging out and things like that. My family crying at the bottom of the bed. So Marty can probably fill in the blanks a bit in between there, because I know I've heard bits and pieces. I've spoke to Marty as well myself, but he'll be able to fill in what happened in between.
Marty, what was your memory? Did you see Brendy collapse, or was it after he collapsed did you realise something was wrong?
No, actually, to be fair, I actually seen it. I've seen it from the very start. Obviously, I was probably one of the furthest away I was seen, but as you know, as a goalkeeper sees the most, I suppose. And I remember just looking ahead of me, and the ball would have been, and it wasn't with Brendy, but it was in around the middle of the pitch, and that's really where it happened. And I just seen Brendy just pretty much, running, jogging, and just with a split second, you could just see his body sort of just folded in half.
Yeah.
And he just went down, head down, and just collapsed out of nowhere. There was no, you couldn't see that there was anything wrong with him before that. Just split second from 100% fit, running to just lie on the ground. So I was scared even to see, because obviously nobody knew what's happening. So as you can expect, everybody ran straight away to see what's happened. And obviously I was furthest away, so because there's so many new Brendy at the very start, yourself, too many people, there's no point having so many people around, you're only really creating panic. So yeah. I probably stood back at the start. Don't get me wrong, I don't medically, I'm not the paramedic, so I don't really know much about it. So I was happy to sort of just stand back a wee bit to see what's happening. And I think, fair play to the lads. I know, Stephen McCullough, I think he was straight on the phone to the ambulance. And I heard people saying, "Oh, he's having seizure." And then, the more I sort of watch, I never seen a seizure in my life, if you know what I mean. But I have a fair idea of what it should look like, and it just didn't look to me like a seizure. So, I think Tull went running for the defib, and the defib came, and I seen the defib lying on the ground, and nobody was coming near it. And actually, that's when I thought, right, there's no point in that lying there. So that's where really I got involved. Luckily I got plenty of training from working under and forum as a casual, like, so I sort of knew how to apply it. So I suppose that helped. And I've stuck it on Brendy, and literally within 30 seconds when I put it on, you just see the Brendy slipping away, and pretty much from breathing heavily. Suppose he was gasping for air at that time, and just click of fingers, he was out. And luckily at that stage I already had defib was sort of reading the pulse at the time, and so obviously I started my CPR, and the defib sort of started analysing and read the heartbeat and knew it needs to give a shock. So I gave a shock, and after a shock I sort of came back doing a CPR again, and I started reading again, and didn't need the second shock, but sort of had to continue CPR. And I think after the second round of CPR, you could just see Brendy came back. Like, it was, I would say within 10 seconds, he took about a minute of air, and he just took this big, massive breath. And I think the release, everybody you've seen it, was so good to see. Because from one line there, and you could just see the colour on his face, and he just took that big breath, and it was such a relief for everybody, I think. But obviously at that stage, I don't think anybody still knew what's happening.
Yeah. So,
and luckily shortly after, there's a local nurse that came down, and the local firefighter who's also, I think he's a trained paramedic as well. So thankfully they were down shortly after that, and had the wee thing reading the pulse. So I think everybody was a lot calmer, knowing that there's a wee machine there, and we know exactly if he was to slip away. And to be fair, everybody, like the whole club, like as I said before, like as when I was talking to people, it was a community effort. Like I know people say to me, give him CPR, but as I said, I still haven't got the defib down from the start. That was vital seconds.
Yeah. So
that's the scariest thing in my life, but I'm just glad we can talk about it now with Brendy, and that's such a relief, I think, for everybody within the club.
For you, that when you were playing the CPR, do you remember, did it feel like time was stuck and it was forever, or did you feel like it was a really quick period? Do you remember any thoughts you might have had at the time?
I think once it happened, I've done it plenty of times on mannequins. To be fair, thankfully I had plenty of training of it. I just went straight into it. I didn't even think. I was just automatically, I was I've done it 100 times before. Even I haven't, so I think it's all down to the amount of training I've got in under and forum, which I just straight into it. And I remember at the very start, I remember going and giving Brendy CPR, and I could feel his ribs, and which was then gave me a thing in my head, right? Am I doing this right? But thankfully, as I kept going, and I remember. Thankfully, I sort of remember from the training I received just to keep going, and thankfully I did. And Killer was there right beside me, and he was calming me down, which was a massive help too.
Yeah.
And having an ambulance on the phone too, and I couldn't tell you if I felt whether it was quick or not. I don't even know how. I think it was 2 rounds of CPR. I can't even remember because there was that much happening. I know once the wee nurse came and the firefighter fella, I sort of had to give myself back because I don't think I could have handled more myself. Yeah. And see, to be honest, I don't think it hit me for a good wee while of what happened.
Yeah.
So and it's still with me. I don't think things like that you just don't forget.
It's one of them things as well where, of course, you said you're well trained in first aid, and you've done it a lot of times. Quite often when you do a first aid course, I done one last year and I'd done CPR once. It's that long. It feels that long ago that I wouldn't even remember how to do it if it came across. And then even if it did, you would almost freeze and then doubt yourself where you just went straight into survivor mode almost. Like you just seen that somebody's life needed saved, and you're very modest about what you've done, because realistically, Brendy was gone. Like he was gone. You saved his life. So it's an incredible thing to have happened. It's a bad thing to have happened to Brendy, but it's incredible what you've done for him and for his family and everybody involved, mate. So you'll never forget that. So it'll always stay with you.
I know, plenty of people said it, but like I said pretty much to everybody, like I still classify that as a community effort.
Yeah.
As I said before, if the defib wasn't there, if say Killer wasn't there to calm me down, do you know what I mean? Things could be so much different. If the club hadn't defib, do you know I mean? This could have happened anywhere else. And you can do all CPR in the world, but defib was the lifesaver.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, the training definitely helped. Thankfully, like with the council, I would have training at least once a month. And like I started doing my coaching badges, and I think it was March. I'd done my level 1. So there was a few years of first aid training on that as well. So thankfully, I had training, and obviously I haven't never done it on a person. But thankfully, I just shows the importance of doing it, and like I would really encourage people to take first aid course where they think they need it or not. Like I work on the leisure centre as a casual outside of my full-time job, and I would never have thought I will need CPR on a football pitch.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? So
it's almost an insurance. It's something you have constantly and you train for constantly, hoping you may never need it.
Yep.
But when you do need it, it's there, and you have that knowledge and you have the ability to be able to carry out what's necessary.
It's like, as I said, I would definitely encourage anyone if they're not sure, even a wee tiny bit of knowledge. Thankfully, a lot of DFibs talk you through how to do CPR.
Yeah.
But I think sort of having a fair idea yourself, it saves vital time of doing it.
Yeah, Brendy, at that stage, then you said earlier you went in the induced coma, but this had happened on Saturday afternoon. You were in induced coma until the Sunday evening. But you woke up not knowing what day it was, etc. When you woke up and heard what happened, what was your first thoughts or feelings?
To be honest, I can remember waking up, Gary, and just kind of thinking, what's going on here? I remember looking down and there was a tube in my throat, and I could see my mum and Nicola, my wife, at the bottom of the bed, and I was kind of thinking, what's happening? I was just more confused than anything.
Yeah.
And then I think I kind of went back to sleep, and the next time I woke up, then I obviously came out of the coma, but it was in intensive care. And I woke up, and then my family were able to tell me kind of what happened, that we were playing a match in Klopp, and actually went into cardiac arrest. So they figured out kind of the cardiac arrest then obviously was what caused my obviously heart to stop. And at that point, I was kind of just, it took a few days for it all to kind of settle in. You wake up and something like as traumatic as that happens, I kind of couldn't get my head around it. I was in intensive care. As you say, I was in the coma. I think I got rushed to the hospital, obviously, on the Saturday afternoon. Went straight into resus, and they worked on me there. And then I think I went into the induced coma on the Saturday night. And they said basically that my family, like talking to them now, like they were prepared for the worst. The doctors and consultants that were working on me were basically saying like probably stands less than 50-50 chance of survival. And if he does survive, there's a high percentage that there's going to be some form of brain damage or longer lasting, effects and things like that. So it was obviously a traumatic time for them, and and everyone, especially the people who were there that day. to watch something like that, I'm sure it was probably very, very traumatic, and probably always be with them right through, the rest of their lives. Haven't seen something like that, but they brought me out of the intensive care. Then it basically said that the coma, that I could be in the coma for up to 2 to 3 weeks, but depending on how I kind of reacted to it. But I kind of showed a bit of signs on the Sunday afternoon that they thought they might try and wake me, and then they thought, no, we'll wait. And then on the Sunday evening, they kind of said to my family, we're going to try and wake him just to see, but we might have to put him back to sleep again. But when I woke up, they were happy with the signs and whatever else they checked out for. So they took me out of the coma then on the Sunday night, kept me in intensive care overnight, and then I was moved up onto the wards then on the Monday evening. And that's when it kind of started taking reality, really, that what had happened, and how lucky I was, basically, that what Marty done that day and what anyone at that club done that day. Like, I mean, I can never thank anybody enough. How do you thank people that saved your life? I don't know. And like, for me, my family, like, I had two young girls, as I mentioned earlier, like, as you said, I was basically gone until the guys, everyone that was there that day, and the fact that the club have a defib at the pitch basically saved my life. And you can't thank people enough for that. It's, even thinking about it now, it's a harsh reality, but if they hadn't have reacted the way they did that day, then I wouldn't be here to tell the tale, kind of thing. So I know Marty's being very, very modest there. From stories that I've heard and from talking to the boys that were there that day, I know Marty's saying about the whole community thing, but I think if he hadn't kicked into action when he did, I think there would have been more standing around, because, as you say yourself, Gary, like, it's okay being trained in CPR, but I'm trained. I've had 2 or 3 first aid courses and things like that. Thankfully, I've never had to do CPR, but I don't know how I would react. I don't know if I would freeze. I don't know. You don't know until that moment kicks in. And I remember waking up even on the Monday and Tuesday, and the consultant coming around them, and she was explaining everything in more detail about what a cardiac arrest was, and they didn't know the cause or anything at that point, but they were very complimentary if you ever done the CPR and the defib, because they basically the first 3 minutes are so crucial, especially for like a longer term brain damage and things like that. But they basically said whoever done the CPR done very, very good CPR, and that they kicked in within the first 3 minutes, because if they had have waited any longer than that, things could have been a lot worse. So it's it's still, I mean, it's still taking a long time to sink in, but at least I'm here, as I say, to let it sink in and tell the tale. So.
From my part, obviously we're cousins, so I found out on the Saturday afternoon what had happened, and it was surreal hearing it. And it was surreal hearing what had happened, because, believe it or not, there's less than a year between us, but I look about 10 years older than you in terms of fitness as well. And I'm thinking, no, our Brendy's fit as anything. He's fit as a fiddle. Does never smoked, doesn't drink that much, and you're thinking that can't happen. But then now I can only think what it was like for the likes of Nicola and your mummy and stuff. But for those 2 days, like from Saturday until Sunday night, it was just constant. What's happening? And then the different stages for me was, okay, you got to the hospital stable, but then right, he's in a coma. So was there a lack of oxygen in your brain? And like you said, that the girls had prepared themselves for the worst, and the fact that you've made such an incredible turnaround, that you're in terms of you've no brain injuries whatsoever. It's incredible, and it just goes back to what we were saying earlier about what Marty did. Like, the fact he reacted so quickly meant that you were able to sit here and have a proper conversation, and you're not affected in any way in that aspect. So it's surreal even thinking about what happened and what you went through.
Yeah, no, like, as you say, Gary, like, if they hadn't kind of done what they done that day, things could have been a lot worse. Marty obviously done the CPR, the guys that went and got the defib and things like that, and they were able to keep me, and even the guys at the paramedic, or firefighter and the nurse that then came around and helped out as well. Like, I can't be more thankful for them. I think, Marty, the air ambulance arrived first of all,
it was actually the police actually arrived first from what I remembered. They must have heard on the radio, because like I think the police came within within the first 15-20 miles. I said no, that's hard for me to tell time really what, but I know police was there. I was there definitely first, and then there was I think there was like a first response. Paramedics came. Then there was an ambulance come, air ambulance. Like, you name it, they were there, and it's still sort of hard for me to talk about it at times. Like, but like I know people say, "Oh, I have good recollection," but I actually don't. Like, it's just so much went on that day, and like I didn't know where it was me trying to sort of block my memory from it or not. But like, as I said, there was like, even when we brought Brendy back, like we could see how much work the paramedics were doing with Brendy at that time, and I'd say since the air ambulance come and the paramedics, I'd say there was still maybe a good hour with Brendy in the middle of the pitch, and even at that stage, like, we don't know, is Brendy still with us? Is he not? Obviously we didn't want to get close to. They're still the paramedics. They had to obviously do what they had to. So I was a long time for me. Like, I remember going home. Like, I stayed in the club for a while to sort of process. I know I had quite a few drinks that night, to be fair, and I think that many drinks, and I was never sober in my life when I got home. The adrenaline just still kicking in, but I was the most miserable few days of my life, like, for myself, not knowing what's happening, because obviously we were kind of relying on information passed on. Obviously the family members probably weren't with Brandi at the time either, and I was just waiting. And as you probably well know, in football groups and what's happening, that you get any sort of information, and you want to have that one person to sort of, like, I turned the whole chat off, and there was only two people I talked with Brandi to, which I knew, there'd be no gossips. I just wanted no information, and I think it was a Sunday, because it happened Saturday. I know it was a Sunday I got word that there was Brendy's woken up. It was Sunday, wasn't it, Brendy? And then I got the word Sunday, and like, see even hearing those news, because as Brendy said earlier, I don't think the family was prepared for the worst. I think so everybody, and like I was dreading my phone buzzing, because I just, like, when I looked any message coming, I just didn't know what this message was going to say. And like, I am so thankful that we are sitting here having this conversation, like, because like, I don't know how I would have coped with how to go any other way. Like, I was like see after doing what I've done, like, I was sort of doubting myself. So have I done right? Have I done anything wrong? And I think I was starting to think, what if things go wrong? Like, what's like, I was still started COVID, and then there were all these things go through my head, right? What if I had it and I gave it to Brendy, and maybe that will complicate things? Or have I done CPR wrong that and maybe causing more harm? All those sort of things were going through my head. But like, at the same time, like, see the fact that brought them back, I don't think I really, as hard mentally it was for me, like, I think I was happy with what I've done, and I would have done it again and done it for anybody. But I remember getting that message that Brendy's awake. Like, I don't think I've ever been as happy in my life, or in my wedding. They just like listening.
Marty, I remember my uncle Paddy Kelly. He you spoke to him when it happened, and you apologised because you said, I think I've broke his ribs, And Paddy says, I don't care how many ribs you've broke, you've just saved his life. Which it goes to show, like you were obviously said, you were thinking like in your head, did I do things right or whatever? And it's important to note as well that you and Brendy weren't long-term teammates. You didn't really know each other that well, which makes it even more incredible that you've done this for almost a practical stranger. And it shows the strength of a football club. He was your teammate. You went there and you did what you did to save his life, because you would have done it for any person, but it goes to show what a football team can do as well. And he's all got together, like you said, the community and the strength of the club got behind him, and he's here now.
I actually say, because I know Brendy was saying, like Brendy actually left at the time I first joined the club, and I think it was maybe 2-3 years ago, and I think that was Brendy sort of coming back to Crumlin. Like, so I would have heard Brendy's name mentioned a lot of times, obviously with the family connections with him, that, but like I could have probably just about put Brendy's name to his face, if you know what I mean. I would have knew, if you tell me Brendy, I would have sort of knew what he looks like. I'm not sure if me and Brendy had a conversation before ever, no? Did we, Brendy?
I remember, as you say, Marty, I was just left Crumlin when you joined that summer, and then I remember I was talking to Kieran Caldwell. I think I'd mentioned this to Gary as well earlier, and basically I decided I'm not going to play that season, and then Kieran was on the phone saying, listen, sign a form, see how you get on. But I remember that they were having a bus trip to Dublin at the end of pre-season, and I thought, whether I'm playing or not, I'm going to go to Dublin. And I think I was the first, probably your first game or one of your first games. And I remember that, like, we obviously didn't know each other then. You know, Marty was new, but I remember him trying to sing in the karaoke on the way home, and it wasn't great. But yeah, I kind of played maybe 1 or 2 games, and then I left that year, and then didn't play that year, and then sang for Tullymore the following year. So, as Marty says, I was planning on going back to Crumlin this season to give it one last we go, but that's not happening anyway at the minute. So
about the singing, I have a bit of an excuse for that. I got engaged the night before, and I went to Dublin with the lads to get pissed. And I was crawling back up the stairs. I think I was feeling the pressure of getting home at that stage.
You're better at CPR than you are singing, Marty. We'll take that.
Well, that's definitely for sure.
Brendy, after you woke up, obviously, then there was a long period in the hospital. It was 3 months? Or tell us what happened during that period, or what has happened since then, and the surgeries you've went through as well.
Yeah, I'll try and sum it up quickly for you. It was a long process. So that the cardiac arrest obviously happened on the 11th of July. So I was brought into the hospital on the 11th of July. I didn't get discharged from the hospital until the 1st of October. So all in all, I think it was just over 12 weeks. So brought in then, obviously, when I woke up on the Monday and Tuesday, the consultant come around basically saying, listen, you've had a cardiac arrest. You know, you're stable now, your heart rate's looking okay, but what we need to do is figure out what caused this to ensure that we can prevent it happening again as best we can. So the first probably 5-6 weeks, they were just doing scans and tests, and there was different consultants. And originally they thought I had cardiomyopathy, which is very, very, very common. It's a hereditary condition. You'll hear, like, you hear footballers that have clots with heart conditions. Quite often it is cardiomyopathy, and like Daley Blind and Fabrice Mwamba and things like that, they all had cardiomyopathy. So they thought that was the main thing. But when they were doing the different scans, done the MRIs and then they done a CT scan. Basically, the CT scan checks the arteries around your heart, and they thought, he's young, he's 33, he's not a smoker, he's not overweight. They weren't even going to do the CT scan because they thought it wasn't a blocked artery that caused this. He didn't have a heart attack, he had a cardiac arrest. But they thought, we'll do it for completeness. And when they done that scan, they realised then that one of my coronary arteries, my left coronary artery, your coronary arteries are basically supposed to start from your aorta into your heart. But my left one basically was attached to the pulmonary artery. So the left-hand side of my heart basically has never it's something I was born with, and never knew for 33 years. Basically, there was no oxygen getting to the left side of my heart. So it's a condition called Al-Kappa, and they had to explain, they had to do a lot of research on it because it's a very, very rare condition. I think there's only been 2 people diagnosed in this country in the last 20 odd years. So it's very, very rare, but normally it's diagnosed in babies because, as I say, it's something you're born with. It's a congenital heart condition, and you normally don't brave or don't survive past, you know, a few months that they'll click on that the baby maybe has. So my first question was, how have I survived 33 years knowing that I have this? And they were a bit baffled, but basically the right side of my heart, the arteries down that side, trebled in phase and kind of done the work for the left side. So basically, as you get older and your heart has to work a bit harder, as you get less fit and things like that, it must have just came to that, you know, that at that point in that game where my heart was thinking, we're having to work too hard here. And at that point, that's what caused, they're 99% sure that's what the cause was, the cardiac arrest. So originally, when they thought it was a couple of different things, they were saying about, you know, well, you know, you'll be on medication for life and you'll maybe have to have a defibrillator inserted under the skin and things like that. So, but when they diagnosed Al-Kappa, they knew then that they needed to do open heart surgery. So I think it was in the hospital. Yeah, I had it early September, so it was about 8-9 weeks I'd been in the hospital before I actually got the open heart surgery. But what they tried to do was move the artery from where it was back to where it was supposed to be when you were born. And they could have done easier surgeries, but they wanted to do that one to give me a bit more of a physical life than because of my age and things like that. So they've done that surgery at the start of September, and it's called the reimplantation. So they done that, and then a week later, when they were doing checkup scans and things like that, they looked at the artery that they'd moved, and they realised that it had clotted and closed over. So I then had to go back in and get stents. So when I say back in, I was still in the hospital, but I then had to go back into another minor surgery and get stents put in to open up the artery again. And I had to stay in for longer then to make sure that the stents stayed in place. And then they went back to the original plan to put in the defib. So I had the open heart surgery, then the stents, and I've now had a defib inserted down my left side of my rib cage. And basically that they're confident that the cardiac arrest won't happen again as long as the artery stays open and the heart will obviously monitor to check that it works as it's supposed to. But the defib's in place as that 1% chance that it may have been caused by something else. And if it does happen again, it'll give me a better chance of surviving. Because as Marty said, and we've touched on, the fact that the defib was there was probably, as well as the CPR, was a massive, you know, it's the reason I survived. So I was in the right place at the right time. And that's the way I look at it. I'm very, very lucky. You know, people have been diagnosed with underlying heart conditions, you know, and they manage them and things like that. Other people haven't been so lucky, and it's when they die, then they realize there was something there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like I look at that and think, how lucky was I? You know, I've been through surgeries and I'll have a condition that I have to manage the rest of my life, but at least I'm here for my family and for myself and my friends and things like that. You know, I have to look at the positive way. But yeah, so it was a long time in hospital. I eventually got out then 1st of October. And I've been a few checkups and treadmill tests planned, and you know, I have a long way to go. Don't get me wrong, but at least I'm here, and I'm willing to put the work in to get it, you know, to lead a normal life as I can. But it's just now, you know, it's a condition I have to live with. But as I said, I'm very, very lucky to be here to live with that condition. So
yeah, you said it, Brendy. It's the fact that you were in that situation when that happened. So first of all, it was a miracle you even lived as long as you did with that condition, without it being an issue. And then when it was an issue, the situation you were in allowed somebody like Marty, to be there to be able to give you CPR, and also the defib even just being there. If you had ever played, I have no idea how many pitches in the amateur league have a defib on site, but you happen to be at one. And not just that, is it right that Crumlin hadn't long got their defib in as well?
No, I think Crumlin have had the defib for a few years.
Right.
I don't know. As long as I played for Crumlin, there was always a defib there. I'm almost sure, but I think they've maybe got a second one now.
Right.
So there's one in the bar and one out of the pitch. I think that's maybe that's
Right,
that's a
okay.
new one. But yeah, it's, as you say, I don't know how many pitches in the amateur league, and I assume higher level, like Premier Division and Championship, may be a requirement. I'm not 100% sure, but I can't do anything more than encourage clubs to have a look into getting one, and where they can, you know. And I think people maybe think they're very expensive and things like that, but I think there's ways around it. You can do payment plans for them, or you know, you
can
maybe
rent them
or rent them or something. But I, for one, definitely encourage, if it's possible, that every club should have one in at their pitch. But I suppose it's difficult when you go down the levels and maybe don't have a pitch, or you know, they're playing at council pitches. I'm not too sure how many of the council pitches would have one, and you know, it's something that, you know, like, you may know better than I do, Gary, about how many, you know, if Ford go to different games, and you know, how many defibs do you see at pitches? I'm not sure.
It's something we haven't really played since this happened, but it's something I never actually looked for, because I've never thought about it before, because I've never seen it happen on a football pitch. But now, every time I go to a pitch, it's probably the first thing I'm going to look to see, and it's because it's close to home and it's happened, and I know, and like, it's just the whole thing itself is incredible. The situation, how Marty reacted, the whole thing. I hope that clubs watching this who maybe don't have a defib might start to think, do you know what, that could be one of our players, that could be one of our friends, teammates, that could be something that we could stop from happening if we had a defib on site.
Yeah,
definitely. I think another thing, I don't know if there's, does every club have to have, like, you know, the IFA put people through, like, first aid training and things like that? That may be another thing that clubs might want to look into, you know. For every first team squad or second team squad, do they have a trained first aider at a game? Or, you know, as we said earlier, you can be trained, you may not react, but the more people that are trained, then the more chance that, like, someone like Marty will pop on and do what they have to do at that specific time. You know, I don't know if it's a necessity or whatever requirement for certain things. I wouldn't imagine it is, but it's something, again, that clubs may want to consider.
Yeah, definitely. You're talking about the defibs. You know, like, obviously, I'm not sure the cost of defibs, but at the end of the day, do you mean it's a life? And like, if it's no matter what, how much it costs, like, that's, you know, that's priceless. So, like, as you said, if there's a possibility to get one, I think any club should do as much as they can when they're prepared to get one, because it's human life, and as you have said there, it can happen to anybody, and it could happen to somebody walking down the street beside the club. Do you mean it doesn't have to be a club member? It could be anybody. You know, I think we're in Crumlin, we're lucky enough. I think there's also one in the shop just across from the pitch as well. So that's very important, like, to have it. You know, I know it's hard, especially in current time for COVID and that, to get any kind of funds, like, but I think it should be priority. You know, I know a lot of teams should be getting new kits, new that, but I think it would be worth playing the same kit for a couple of years and get, like, some defib, if possible.
Brendy, have you been up to Crumlin's pitch since it happened?
I haven't, no, I haven't. I suppose obviously with the whole lockdown and things like that, they haven't been doing anything at the pitch. I've spoke to a lot of the club guys, and they've been texting and ringing, and, you know, we players and coaches and even club members and things like that. I met up with Marty just a few weeks ago. We met up at Marty's work and got a chat with Marty there. But there's a lot of boys I'll need to catch up with, and now that hopefully we're maybe having an end in sight and the football may get restarted, I'll hopefully be up at Crumlin soon. All being well, that we don't get another lockdown, as we may well do. But as soon as I can, I'll definitely be up to see some of the guys up there. And return to that fateful pitch.
Now you've retired. You now became supporter, and take it you'll have your favorite player as well on the pitch every Saturday as well.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a goalkeeper Crumlin top with Farniok on the back. Plan. No, listen, I'll obviously, I'm going to take my time away from football and things like that. Obviously, I'm not allowed to play. I'm not allowed to do physical sports, contact sports with the defib in place. But I'll definitely get involved in coaching and at some point along the way. I don't know when, but I will certainly look into it and things like that. Kieran Doc's already tortured me to help out with him with the second team up at Crumlin and things like that. So, but I'll definitely see plenty of the guys. But it gives me a bit of an opportunity to get around and catch some of the old clubs as well, I suppose. So. Yeah. Get down to board games, Tullymore games, things like that. So
trust me, Brendy, coaching's not better for the heart, mate. Probably better playing.
Probably not.
I make sure my heart gets under control first of all before I even think about coaching. So
definitely, lads. Thank you very much for giving up your time. It really is an incredible story, and for anybody that doesn't know about this and to watch the podcast, I'm sure they'll be glad that they've watched it, because within our local football community, it's good to see that there has been such a bad luck for what Brendy had his condition, but a good luck story that what's come out of it, and I'm sure he'll be friends for life after us as well.
I definitely I think with COVID still on, I as much as I'd love to see Brendy more often, but I just wouldn't put him on the risk. Obviously, with the current restrictions, we can't meet up anyway. But I think, hopefully the COVID will sort of go away as soon as we can, so we can get a proper chat.
Yeah.
And hopefully, as you say, I think friends for life.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, you can't thank someone enough for saving your life. So, I mean, I've spoke to Marty personally as well, but on behalf of me and my family, we obviously have a lot to thank Marty and anyone that was there and played any small part that day. We have a lot to thank them for. So I don't know how you go about thanking people, as I said earlier, but even the support that I got from when I was in the hospital, get well soon messages, and from people I hadn't spoken to in years and things like that, it's much appreciated. And we've had a lot of things to deal with, but as I said on numerous occasions, things could have been a lot worse. So the guys that were out that day, and Marty and the air ambulance, and then right through to the current hospital, and with consultants and nurses and even the aftercare now is unbelievable. There's also a wee charity that helped us quite a bit. It's Brave Hearts NI. And they got in touch with me when I was in the hospital. Basically, they're a charity that was set up by a girl when she was 14, and she has a congenital heart condition. She's had open heart surgery 3 times, and she decided at the age of 14 to set up a charity, and they've been a massive support. They help anyone with congenital heart problems from babies right up to adults, and it's all obviously the charity. It's all self-funded and things like that. They've been massive help support for me and my family, so just a wee shout out to them as well. But as I say, I have a lot to be thankful for, and it just shows you that you can't take anything for granted. And I certainly won't be moving forward.
I'll make sure when I'm posting the link to this episode, I'm going to make sure to tag Bravehearts NI and anything. So if anybody wants to check out Bravehearts NI, and maybe if there's a possibility to donate, then they can do so. Brendy, I'm sure everybody watching will want to wish you best of luck in the recovery. Obviously, you're still a wee bit to go, and Marty, I know you have a wee one on the way, so best of luck with that as well, mate. It'll be fun. Thanks very much, lads. I really appreciate you giving up your time as well. I'm now joined by James Murphy from Tullymore Swifts. Murph, I've just had a chat with Brendy here, Big Marty Farniok, the goalkeeper up at Crumlin. Brendy, of course, was training with Crumlin when the incident occurred where he has a cardiac arrest, but he was still technically a Tullymore player. He played a season with Tullymore. He hadn't officially left Tullymore, but I know your club has had previous history with players with heart issues. Do you want to give us a wee bit of an insight into that?
Well, Tony Campbell was the first player that we had, and he died of heart complications back 3 years ago. And we have an annual tournament every year in his memory. People probably see it on Facebook and across Twitter and Belfast Live and stuff on it. But Tony was only 29 at the time. Super fit, similar to Brendy Dorrian, as fit as they come. Trained down in the Devonish a couple of nights a week. Trained with a club a couple of nights a week. Played his match on a Saturday, and took sick one Sunday morning, and unfortunately by the time he got to the hospital, they worked on him for a wee while, and then he passed. But Tony had something wrong with his heart that nobody ever knew about. It was undetected his whole life. And there's, I took a few notes earlier on, there's something like, there's 620,000 people in the north and in Britain with a faulty gene that can lead to an inherited heart-related condition. So there's thousands of young footballers, rugby players, Gaelic players, all running about out there and have no idea that they're a ticking time bomb. That's what they said about Tony. Whenever Tony died, he was a ticking time bomb. Could have happened at any time. And then after that happened to Tony, then last year, big Mark Prendergast, who played for our over 35s. Mark was 38, 39. And again, fit as a fiddle. Mark used to be a personal trainer, although he was working as an electrician at the time when he died. He was a personal trainer, big strapping lad, strong, as fit as a come. And again, he had an undetected condition in his heart. Never had any warning signs, never knew anything about it until he got to the hospital that day. And unfortunately, that the doctors couldn't save Mark either. So, I mean, everybody hears about the Mark Vivian Foways and the Cormac McAnallans, Fabrice Muamba, all these famous footballers, and there's rugby. There was a young Irish rugby player, McCall, played in the Ireland under 19s as well, collapsed on the pitch. You hear about all these people, and people sort of, oh, that's terrible, and they don't really think much more of it. But defibs are the key. Every club should do everything they can to try and get their hands on a defib. If there was no defib, Brandi Dorian wouldn't be with us today. Yeah. And strangely enough, Brendy lives in Poglass. And do you know the man who invented the defib? No, a man called Dr. Frank Pantridge. You know, the Pantridge Road in Poglass is named after him, right beside Brendy's house. He invented the defib about 50, 60 years ago. And it has saved thousands upon thousands of people since. So there's a wee bit of local history that you maybe didn't know. There you are.
In terms of what the things that were likes of Tony Campbell, and that then brought your club into more trying to become more aware of heart conditions, and then you started to do more charity work, and you then have got the defib in. Is it something that maybe your club may have never thought of if there hadn't been anything which happened to any of your players, or do you think it's more of a reactive thing for clubs, whereas clubs need to be proactive now before anything happens to one of our players?
Prevention is key. I mean, if you can prevent it from happening, happy days. If you can detect it early enough, you'll get the treatment. We after it happened to Tony, you're right, we probably would have never really got overly interested in it like everybody else. You do a lot of work for loads of charities. We've done stuff for motor neuron and for the homeless and for cancer charities and the hospices and everything else. And the cardiac risk in the young was something I had never heard of it until this happened to Tony, and we sort of started looking into how often it happens, and then you start seeing stats. There's 12 people in the UK under 35 drop dead every week from undetected heart conditions. And if you Google it, if you just go in and Google sportsman or sportswoman heart attack on a pitch or cardiac arrest, you'll just see story after story after story. it's madness how much it's happening, and it definitely doesn't get the awareness and the publicity and the fundraising that it deserves. So after that happened to Tony, as I say, we looked into it. We looked into getting a defib at the club, and Sport NI run we ventures every couple of years, or sometimes they do 2 or 3 in a year, and you fill it. It's a very basic application form and send it off, and they give us a defib for free. So they're available to all clubs. I know there's loads of GAA clubs, soccer clubs, there's rugby, hockey, all the different sports. They're all applying for them, and a lot of the local spars and mace and all that sort of stuff, they would all supply, and you see them in the garages. But that's the goal, is to have one everywhere. If you have that within every minute counts, as Brendy knows, I'm sure he's been told a million times. So the closer you can get that to people, and if it's on a sports pitch and you have one sitting on the side of the pitch, well, then you have a far better chance of survival if they can get it on. And they're very, very easy to use. We applied then through the IFA for like different sort of health and safety courses and first aid courses, and they sent out a guy from Pro Paramedics and took us around in the Tullymore Youth Club. 20 people in our club went round, and it was a 3-week course, 3 hours a night on a Wednesday night for 3 weeks, and show you how to use it. And a defib actually talks to you when you're using it. It tells you what to do. So again, that's it's hopefully you never have to use it, but if you do, there's a potential that it's going to save somebody's life, and it won't be what Tony Campbell's family's gone through, Mark Prendergast's family's gone through, and thousands of other people. We might be able to get more Brandi Dorian's people who survive. But in saying that too, it's weird because a lot of the times the person that survived, people sort of go, he went into cardiac arrest and he made it happy, and they forget their families go through all this stuff too. And that's why charities like Cardiac Risk in the Young, their whole ethos is around support, screening, research and awareness. So all the money, they're more or less completely depend on donations. And the same this year, we teamed up with the Chest, Heart and Stroke NI as well. And 90% of the funding that goes into Chest, Heart and Stroke NI comes from donations. So they want to get it out there. And as we started, before I went off on a tangent here, it's prevention. Prevention is key. If they can get enough people screened, like CRY have screened over 210,000 people, and I think they're going about 15 years, maybe 20 years. But they've screened 210,000 people in that time, and the ECG will normally pick up on the majority of heart heart irregularities or defects and stuff like that. So Brendy actually went on one of the ones that CRY is more sort of based in Britain. They come over here. They do come over here, but they come over here maybe once, twice, 3 times a year. So we've sent people up to Coleraine. There was a load of us went up a couple of years ago up to Coleraine up in the university. And we all got ECGs up there. And then last year they were back and they were hosting the event up in Chiernogue GAA Club in Randallstown. Right. So Brendy went up there and got an ECG, and they detected some sort of an irregularity. So I don't know where he was talking to me about it when you were speaking to him, but he was on a waiting list to go in and get seen by a cardiologist or a consultant or somebody. So it did pick it up. Unfortunately, before he got seen to, that happened to him. He went into cardiac arrest on the pitch, but he would have got seen a lot sooner because he'd done the ECG than if he'd never been. He just never ever would have knew there was anything wrong.
Yeah. For any clubs out there listening, any committee men, players, coaches, what would your advice be? Screening, defib, or both?
Both. The more you can get, the better. Training as well, training people how to react. I mean, I don't think there's too many of us that would have the expertise as was it Marty, was the goalkeeper, that performed the shock Brendy back to life on the pitch. I don't think there's too many people could do it as well as he done it. But if you get a wee bit of training, it familiarises you with it. You're not going in green, you know what I mean? Obviously, when something like a traumatic event happens in front of you, you're going to panic, you're going to freak out and everything else. But something will stick in your mind from that training.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a load of different things, like a heart attack it's a plumbing issue in your heart. There's a blockage, whereas cardiac arrest is an electrical issue, and that's where the defib comes in. You know what I mean? But these things, you'll pick things up on the course. You'll never remember everything, but you'll pick a lot of stuff up. So doing that and being familiar, they'll let you work on the wee mannequins and stuff as well, and you'll know what the defib's going to say to you and what you need to do when it says it to you. So doing the training, and the IFA run a lot of them. Sometimes you have to pay for them, but if you look in the right places and you try hard enough, the clubs will get them sponsored, and they'll be able to apply through the city council grants and everything else for training. But the training, the defib, and the screening, just CRY, their website, it's cry.org.uk. You can go on there and check all the different screenings that they do, and just keep an eye out for when they're coming here. But they only work with people aged 14 to 35. It's obviously it's in the name. It's cardiac risk in the young. And I'm a pensioner now. I'm 37, so I wouldn't qualify, but I did qualify 2 years ago and get in just in time. But they'll bring in as many people as your club that can go in and book a slot. They'll take them all. But
that age range does cater for a majority of players within senior teams anyway. So it does. And then, like you said, the classes that you can do, the first aid courses you can do, like when Brendy collapsed on the pitch, there was 22 players, a couple of coaches, and among all those people, there's probably 10, 11, 12 people who have done first aid. And even if Marty wasn't 100% sure on what he was doing, I'm sure other people could have pitched in and added in their bits to do this, do that. But
and
the fact that Marty was so well trained. Yes,
referees are usually very well trained in first aid and stuff. But yeah, I mean, amongst everybody, that's what I'm saying about the training courses. Even when you'd be talking about it every now and again, and everybody will remember something different from the training. So with everybody there, and there's a sample of them people that have been through the training, you'll all know enough to hopefully save somebody's life if it ever happens. You know what I mean?
And then the charities we spoke about, cardiac risk in the young, chest, heart and stroke. I know your club have done a lot of work for both charities, and basically what I would say that is, if any clubs are thinking about doing any charity work or any other players, they're good charities to get involved in, because like you said, they're saving people's lives and they're supporting families as well. So if you're ever unsure of any charity work to do, folks, it's two good charities to get involved in there.
Yeah, definitely. And especially at the minute with the lockdowns, all the charities are struggling. Nobody's been able to get out and do the marathons and the bike rides and all the different football tournaments, everything that we always normally do. All that stuff's been put to the wayside. So the charities are struggling. They're looking for donations now more than ever. But if people go on and look at the likes of the CRY website, and they do like a quarterly magazine as well that comes out, and it lists all the people who their families and their friends and their clubs and stuff have done different charity events and donated money. There's a photograph and a listing of, and you're going through page after page after page. One of the flyers for people here in the north, there's 12 pictures on it. Cormac McAnallen is probably the most well-known one on it. But there's wee kids on it at 8. There's a wee girl on it, wee girl, something 8 years old. There's 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 20 people in their 20s, 30-year-olds. It's frightening how common it is and how little there is known about it.
Yeah. Murph, I want to thank you for giving up your time. I'm glad after speaking to Brendy, I wanted to get you on because I know that your club especially is put a lot of effort into charity work with CRY and Chest, Heart and Stroke, and obviously it's something which has hit your club hard over the last lot of years. So the reason for wanting to get you on and speak about these things is because I believe, my club included, we all need to get proactive, and it's another thing to protect our players. We're one big community in the football community, and within your club, you need to protect your players, your teammates, coaches, and all the gather. Folks, thanks very much for listening to this special edition podcast. The podcast is sponsored by Learners Ross Driving School and Drumbo Park Racecourse. I'll be back in the new year with another episode. Thanks very much.